Welcome to Blackout, everyone. I'm Andrew, and I'm joined by Ed and Thomas. Today's video, we're going to be talking about the differences between PlayerUnknown Battlegrounds and Fortnite, kind of just lay out some key differences between the games, and hopefully help you come to a decision to where you can find whichever of the two games fits your play style and which one you should play. Start off with Ed, talking about some of the main points with PUBG.
So one of the big things about PUBG, which people seem to talk about, is the fact that it's more realistic in terms of its visuals and I guess you could say its mechanics than Fortnite is, because you've got the graphics and you've got bullet drop and things of that sort. And of course you have all of the different types of weaponry in the game, also attachments, and they're all based off real weapons. And in Fortnite, that really isn't the case, is it, Thomas?
No, the weapons and graphics, I would definitely are more of the arcade sort. I guess that would probably appeal to somebody who's a little less serious, but there is bullet drop also in this game, which is really important as far as, grenade and rocket launcher mechanics, but most importantly, when you're sniping. I think it makes sniping extremely challenging, which is what makes the game very challenging. But as far as strategic things go, there's a lot of realism in the strategic aspect of Fortnite as well, as far as utilizing high ground and cover versus just running out like another arcade type shooter game where you can just run out and kind of do things on your own without any sort of strategy. I've seen time and time again where we've played together or other people when they're just kind of running around with no purpose or, not looking out for themselves. It will surely lead to your death in the game. So I would say it's realistic in the important aspects. I will say, it just depends. The graphics, I think, make it a little less serious than PUBG, maybe even a little less intense. But, I would say as far as sweatiness goes, they're probably about the same with the players.
Yeah,
so,
I think with PUBG, there's a lot of different things that you can combine. Like there's all of these attachments for each gun, and there's more guns than Fortnite, because in Fortnite you can pick up an AR, a submachine gun, a sniper rifle, and so on. But with PUBG you can pick up all of those things, and in addition to that there's more guns and there's more attachments. And the attachments like red dot sights, foregrips, they all affect like the properties of your gun. So if you have a foregrip, you'll be more accurate, and if you have a red dot sight, you'll have a better aim down sights animation and look on the actual HUD. So when it comes to the actual capabilities of all the different weapons, you can change them quite a lot more on PUBG compared to Fortnite. But I think where that kind of gets a little bit blurred is when you start talking about the building in Fortnite, because I think that kind of replaces some of the aspects of the attachments in PUBG, because you can make forts to kind of build around someone having an RPG, for instance. If you don't have an RPG, you could build a metal fort, whereas in PUBG, if someone's got an RPG or a grenade launcher, you kind of can't really get away from that. You're gonna get blown up pretty quickly.
Yeah, and that's probably where the biggest difference between the two games lies. Instead of finding guns and then getting attachments for them, you pretty much have to find guns with the attachments. And Fortnite's gotten better about adding things like that into the game. You can find assault rifles with ACOG scopes on them. They just added silenced pistols into the game. You have silenced SMGs in the game, but you can't add, you can't make guns your own. So for instance, the best guns in the game, being your golden, or I should say the best assault rifles in the game being your golden saw, you can't add anything to it. You have iron sights with no sort of suppressor on it. But the good thing about that, I guess, a little side note, is that it does seem to shoot a little quieter with the SMG. But the forts add, the fort building capabilities in this game for teams or single players, I would say is what really sets Fortnite apart from PUBG, because it kind of extends the last bit of the game, when the final circle starts really closing in on it, and kind of adds a little bit more excitement to the end there, with how you're going to get them out of their fort. Because, once you get into the last, four places, top three places in any mode you play in, people start getting holed up in some pretty serious forts. which I think makes it entertaining on the Fortnite side.
Yeah, so I think that kind of replaces because I was kind of talking about the attachments in PUBG kind of almost being a replacement for the building aspect in Fortnite. And
Right.
it might seem a little strange to compare them, but whereas in PUBG you might get a sniper rifle with a longer scope, that enables you to fire from further away. But in Fortnite, you could just build a castle to defend yourself from an RPG, whereas in PUBG, you might just use a scope to get further away from someone that's got grenades or something.
Right.
So another point to talk about with Fortnite is, in Fortnite you spawn with a pickaxe, and with this pickaxe you can mine almost anything in the game. It can be a house, a car, a rock, a lamppost. And with mining all of these environments in the game, you pick up wood, brick, and metal. And these are different kinds of materials that you can use to build things such as walls, stairs, and floors to help you get to more strategic areas or to reinforce your forts. And there's also things like power-ups in the game, such as shields, boogie bombs, which is something you throw and it makes your opponent dance. And then another power-up called Slurp Juice, where you gain health and shields at the same time. And this is kind of what sets Fortnite apart from PUBG, because Ed was making the point that PUBG is much more realistic than Fortnite, whereas using these kind of mechanics in the game makes Fortnite feel a little bit more arcadey and not as realistic, but it's still a very fun mechanic added into the game.
Right. And I guess something that you could say for PUBG is that although there's a lot more things to pick up in terms of attachments and stuff, there's way more downtime. So I feel like Fortnite has quite a high density of loot compared to PUBG, because there's on Fortnite there's a fully destructible environment and the games last nowhere near as long as the PUBG games. So when you're playing PUBG, you've actually got a little bit more time to traverse the map, look for stuff, and customize your weapons or whatever you want to do. And that's kind of made easier by vehicles, which I guess Fortnite kind of has with the jump pads, because you can place those down and then you can jump on them and then parachute, and that's obviously faster than walking. But I feel like one of the biggest differences, apart from building and picking up resources, is the actual environment, because in PUBG it's bigger, but in Fortnite it's fully destructible.
And I would say that's an important thing to note, because Fortnite, with how fast the game moves, a lot of the time at the beginning of games, because of how quickly you have to move and how random the circle spawn is, it tends to leave you being reckless at times. You can't really take your time and get to where you're going, and at a certain point like that, it starts becoming less skill based and more luck. I think maybe some of that has to do with the weapon and chest spawns and the level of guns you find along the way. But I know we've played certain games in Fortnite together where we've had some great guns, but we have to run halfway across the map to get where we need to be before the circle closes in the first 2 minutes of the game. And that really exposed us, and we've lost a lot of games that we probably wouldn't have lost had we not had to run very far in the first place. So I would say, the pace of game is definitely something important to note, because it can leave you hanging high and dry, at the very beginning of the game.
Absolutely. I think that's probably one of the things which annoys me most about Fortnite. Because the map's a lot smaller, there tends to be higher mountains that I've noticed. In Fortnite, there's a lot of valleys that you can get trapped in, a lot of cities that you can get trapped in. And in PUBG, everything's kind of a little bit more spread out, so the valleys aren't so narrow. And if someone's got the high ground on you, there's always somewhere to run to. There's a tree, a rock, or something like that. And in Fortnite, because it's a little bit more arcadey, it's not quite as... I don't really know how to describe it, but it's just not as... You don't feel like you're in as much peril, but the engagements just end faster in Fortnite, it seems, because they're so much smaller. And in PUBG, you could just drive away or hide in a house, because the house walls can't be destroyed like they can in Fortnite. And I think I'm still sticking to my guns and saying that the destructible environments in Fortnite really is the main thing that sets the game apart, as well as the building mechanics. But go on.
I was going to say, and that's important to note, because it really makes it impossible to hide for long.
Yeah.
You can, in Fortnite, like you mentioned earlier, you can blow up a fortress, metal or not metal. It might take an extra rocket to blow up a metal wall, but that that wall will fall at the end of the day. And with brick, it's the same thing. And it's important to note that because at the end of the day, there's really nowhere safe to hide.
Absolutely. And I think that's, like I said, the biggest difference between them.
So here's something to consider when comparing the two games. With Fortnite is more of a complete game. The game is free for the PvP mode. The Battle Royale mode is completely free in Fortnite to download, and it's very stable. It's less buggy than PUBG. PUBG is very clear, saying that it's an early access game on the Xbox One, and pretty much so still on the PC. And there's a lot of bugs, there's glitches, people getting stuck, things of that sort. So while Fortnite is more of a complete game, and it also does have a PvE mode in it as well that's paid if you want to go that option, but it's not required. PUBG also has some cool tools in it. Like it has cinematic tools in PUBG, and the community really gets really creative with how they kind of create the content for PUBG.
I think a quick side note to note too is, as you mentioned, with the PvE mode being paid for, they did announce this year that the PvE mode will become free at some point in 2018. Yeah, so it's essentially really a free game, which, assuming they make battle passes and microtransactions. And I think by making their game free, they've found a much more forgiving audience with their glitches and bugs that they do have with it.
And the microtransaction system that they do have in Fortnite isn't overstepping any boundaries to where it actually affects the gameplay. There's things you can buy, like outfits for your character, different dance moves your character can do, different explosion effects, things of that sort. And it doesn't overstep to where it actually affects the gameplay of Fortnite. And I think that's why you haven't heard any outrage with the microtransactions in Fortnite compared to, say, like a Star Wars Battlefront 2 or a Halo Wars 2.
Right. It's kind of giving players Fortnite a little more ability to have some sort of individualism if they were to choose to pay for it, and kind of express some sort of individuality in their character and give them some life of their, put a little bit of their own personality into the game if they were to choose so.
Right. And it's also important to note that Fortnite is being developed by Epic Games. These are the guys that originally did the Gears of War series on the Xbox 360. They made Gears 1, 2, 3, and Judgment. And they're also very well known for the Unreal Tournament games way back when on the PC. So these guys do have experience creating multiplayer games, and I think at this point they really know what to do to kind of catch on an audience how they have, because it seems right now everyone and their brother is either playing Fortnite or PUBG.
Yeah, something that I want to quickly insert in there when you were talking about personalization with the whole microtransaction thing is that PUBG have added this cinematic tool which is allowing people to re-watch the games they've played I think since they played the game for the first time, and make films about it. So that's kind of like a really interesting thing for people like us who make videos or stream. You can actually completely rewatch a game from any camera angle, so you could follow anyone in the game. You can move the camera around as it plays and get cinematic shots. And I think that is going to be a really powerful feature, because you'll see things emerge out of PUBG that won't emerge out of Fortnite, like machinimas, crazy videos that people might make with storylines and stuff like that. And I think that's going to be a big thing in the PUBG world pretty soon.
That's actually really cool. I didn't know that. And I think it'll be useful too. A tool like that would be extremely useful for somebody to actually improve in what they're doing. Because when you're not actually watching the game, like you're playing it, sometimes, I especially know for myself, I tend to have tunnel vision at certain points when I get really locked in. So when you get a chance to go back and rewatch it, you can kind of scan the environment a little more and look in the peripherals of the screen and see if maybe there were things that you could have noticed beforehand that maybe you didn't notice that could have improved your game. And it could be solid for YouTubers to get, some decent post commentary versus live commentary, kind of walking people through, which I know you can do now, but if you were to game capture it, but it still gives that option to go back and do it if you so chose.
Yeah, it just provides more interesting angles. Say you get a really good kill, like a headshot across the map, you could have a bird's eye view of it and you could track the bullet or something like that, and it's it just opens up a load of creative ideas, which I guess Fortnite has in terms of its building mechanics, but with regards to making content outside of the game, I think is where PUBG is going to shine, because even though we've seen quite a lot of funny moments from Fortnite, I really think this is going to push PUBG even more forward than it already has been with, with people streaming it as it is. But that's pretty much it. I think we've kind of touched base on a lot of the things that we wanted to talk about here, unless you guys have anything else to add.
No, I mean, the big thing I would add is, again, we're not trying to find a game that's better than the other, or, tell you which game's the best. We're simply just trying to, help gamers that maybe are trying to choose which game they like more or want to play more, and just kind of pointing out, which game would you prefer, or what would fit your play style a little more. I know, I think the multiplayer presence on Fortnite is a lot bigger. So if you want to play with your friends, you might lean towards a Fortnite. Whereas if you're playing by yourself and are super competitive, maybe you'll lean a little bit more towards PUBG. And if you like the idea of having a little more strategic, destructible landscape, then, again, maybe you choose Fortnite. Or if you want the safety of a building that's not going to collapse on you as soon as someone starts shooting at you, It really just depends on your tastes. We're just trying to, point out the pros and cons of each game.
Yeah, and if you have anything else to add in the comments, I guess you could let us know.
Indeed. So hopefully that narrows down your mindset when deciding whether to pick between Fortnite or PUBG. Both games seem to be pretty excellent, even though it's a little unstable at this moment on the Xbox One. Of course, it's going to get better over time, so it's not like it's a bad game. And there's a ton of people playing it on both PC and Xbox. So whatever you and your friends decide to do, there's definitely going to be people to play against.
Yeah, indeed.
So thanks for watching, everyone. Be sure to post your thoughts in the comments down below. We'll be back with another discussion video shortly.
Thanks for watching.